scale of benefits?
Well, I think every sector is different and has a need for different things. We are phasing out all the extra help we're giving to the oil and gas sector, for example, because we know we got to move towards a lower carbon economy. So every sector will respond to the needs. And what I hear most clearly from the tech sector in the needs are making sure they have access to capital, making sure they have access to talent, and making sure they have access to procurement opportunities. And those are the kinds of things that we're moving forward quickest on. I have no difficulty having confidence in the tech sector's ability to create success, to generate wealth, to create opportunities. We just need to make sure that the infrastructure is there for you to be able to succeed. So we will always support the tech sector as much as it needs to, recognizing that the impacts of the tech sector go through the entire economy, and therefore the benefits need to be felt throughout the economy as well.
You touched on the VC community, and part of it, in terms of the programs that are in place from, VCCI, VCAA, $400 million in terms of, collaboration with the VC community. I want to know what are the steps that, you plan on taking in further bolstering the VC community so we can scale the business and going back to building, much larger, 10 billion market cap businesses.
I think we've recognized that one of the really big challenges in Canada is getting from that, $10 million to $100 million size of company. I mean, there's such a tendency now, and not just in Canada but around the world, to reach that, particular moment and then sell out to a much bigger company and retire. That has been a model for a little while, and we're really looking at how we can make sure that people have the confidence in their own abilities, in their own success, and in the ecosystem that's going to support them, to make them say, no, you know what, I don't want to sell out to a Google or a Microsoft or a big company. I want to build the platform here in Canada, and that is the path that we're working hardest on right now. And the factors that go into that isn't just the government saying, here's some money, you can now succeed. It is actually creating an environment for you to be able to succeed, where you have that access to talent, where you have that access to global markets. I mean, just in terms of trade, Canada is now the only G7 country with a free trade deal with every other G7 country. We have preferred access to 2/3 of the global GDP right from Canada. Obviously, access down south with the renewed NAFTA that we're in the process of moving forward on, access to Europe with the CETA, the Canada-Europe Free Trade Agreement, and then access to Asia with the CPTPP, and it's continuing to grow. We're going to continue to make sure that Canadian companies have privileged access to the world's markets in a very positive way, because that kind of trade ends up flourishing, benefiting all Canadians. And that's the argument that we've been making, and we've been seeing it happen as our economy is growing faster than many other countries. We have one of the lowest debt to GDP ratios, stable legal system, stable banking system, the kinds of things that people are looking for in a world of uncertainty. Canada is providing and continuing to build on.
So speaking of investment and touching on foreign direct investment, we know that 1.9 million Canadians are employed by foreign-controlled entities, and that is 1 in 8 Canadians. And when you're looking at the numbers from 2008 to 2018, Canada, as being a international hub for business, has attracted $824 billion. And when you're looking at the year-over-year growth from 2017 to 2018, that was 60% growth rate in comparison to what we saw across the globe that was down by 20%. So clearly, Canada is very attractive for investment. And I want to ask you this question. What is your elevator pitch for companies that want to grow their business out of Canada? Why should they choose Canada?
Access to global markets through our free trade deals, access to incredible talent through our great education system and our immigration system, strong, resilient communities that embrace within them the diversity of the entire world, that understands how to be part of global markets, global supply chains, a quality of life that is based on being there for our neighbors and leaning on each other. Something about the winters here makes us understand we have to lean on each other to make it through them. But more than that, we understand that standing up for each other's rights and creating strong societies doesn't need politics of division and attack, can bring people together. This is a good place to set down roots. This is a good place to build a company. It's a good place to build a future. We've got socioeconomic, fiscal, banking, legal stability that is world-class. And we're a country qui le fait dans les deux langues en plus, donc on a l'accès à la planète en français et en anglais. We have access to the planet in French and English.
It would also be great for us to maybe talk about organizations like Invest in Canada that were put in place to really facilitate, promote, and accelerate investment in Canada. What do you see as the role of those organizations and the importance of those organizations in terms of increasing foreign direct investment?
Well, I think one of the things that people are looking for, I mean, there was a time where massive tax breaks to get you to move to this particular community or that community was driving a lot of decision. I think people are now making decisions slightly on a more quality basis, slightly on a longer term basis. And what we've realized is, even though Canada already has one of the top ratings in terms of ease of doing business, ease of starting a business in Canada, lowest small business taxes in the G7, the lowest startup capital costs of lowest overall tax burden on new businesses, even compared to the United States. We've got a lot of advantages. What people often need is a one-stop shop to help them navigate through starting a new business. One-stop shop that's going to connect with all the different government agencies, set you up locally, guide you in the process of investing in Canada and creating a new office, a new space. That's what the Invest in Canada Hub is all about. It's about making sure that you have that support, that concierge service, while you are about to invest and draw on the extraordinary Canadian talent that you're looking at harnessing for the future of your company.
Great. So as a female entrepreneur, I'm very much so passionate about gender pay, and I'm very proud to say that gender pay at BBTV is 0%. And we know that half of the population of the planet are women, and more than half the women don't have their own income. That is a quarter of the potential workforce that could be contributing to stronger economies. Now, closing the gender pay gap will contribute $28 trillion to global GDP, which is a 26% increase. In Canada, that will have a $150 billion impact by 2026. And I would actually like to ask the leaders in this room that don't actually practice gender pay and that don't have a 0% gender pay gap to really think about why that is the case and do something about it today. That said, you are a thought leader, you're a global leader on this issue. Canada is a global leader on this issue, but it seems that it's taking too long for us to really experience significant improvements. What does it take to have men and women get paid equally in Canada? And how can we accelerate the process?
We are seeing significant improvements, but you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where even with all the work we've done over the past few years, the pay equity gap in Canada is larger than some countries. You wouldn't think we'd have larger gaps then. That's why we're working on closing it. We're moving forward with a proactive pay equity regime that is going to transform that in a very active way that we're very excited about, but that's something we moved forward with just last year. We also know that making sure there are opportunities for women in all levels, including in the C-suite, is essential if you want to succeed. It's not just a moral right thing to do. We've now seen it's the smart thing to do. We know that diversity and resilience go together. We know that having 40, 50, 60% women on your board, in your organization, leads to better outcomes, and increasingly companies are understanding that and moving forward in a very aggressive way. We've put in specific investments for women entrepreneurs. Part of the VC funding goes specifically towards access to capital for women startups, for women-led startups and companies. We know that that's one of the easy ways to massively boost our output, is to empower too many of these women who've been just left aside because of the patterns that have led for too long in so many industries, including the tech industry. We know that empowering women to succeed makes it better for everyone. That's why Canada's going to keep doing it.
So I know that we don't have much time left. I wanted to finish the conversation by talking about digital trust. I know that you were in Paris last week and you met with other global leaders alongside head of tech companies around discussions with respect to Christchurch, and you unveiled your digital charter focusing on 3 areas, from data ownership, privacy protection, and dissemination of hate online, and that you did say that platforms that do not comply will have a heavy penalty. And as a tech leader, obviously we would love to have clear guidelines, and where we would receive clear guidelines from all the global leaders. And I do believe that a country-specific plan would be very difficult and unrealistic to implement. So what do you think is the role of the government and the tech community in working together to keep our citizens safe around the globe?
Well, I think you've just highlighted. I think it's all about working together. I mean, yes, governments can lay out guidelines and recommendations and indeed penalties if we have to, but we'd much rather be able to work with tech companies. We'd much rather be able to work with platforms to make sure citizens are safe, to make sure their data is safe, make sure that the kind of online aggression, terrorism, disinformation, nastiness that you wouldn't allow in a public space, you wouldn't allow in a real space, shouldn't be happening when people spend so much more time in virtual spaces. Now, we all know we need to protect freedom of speech, we need to make sure we're protecting people's rights, but we always have to find that balance. We always have to make sure we're protecting rights and keeping people safe at the same time. Physically in the real world, but increasingly in the virtual world. And governments, as you all know, take a long time to adjust to new realities. And that's why working in partnership with the platforms, with the tech companies, to reassure citizens who, quite frankly, are really worried. People know that they have a tremendous amount of data that's vulnerable out there. People know that their kids are exposed to God knows what on the internet. They need to know that they have partners out there, in governments, sure, but also within the platforms and the tech companies as well, that are thinking about how we create a safe and flourishing and growing society. We need to leave room for innovation. We need to leave room for challenging disruptions. But we have to make sure at the same time that we're keeping people safe. And the only way we're going to do that is by having frank and open conversations with the big platforms, with the tech companies, with all of you about how we're going to ensure that the way we move forward into this brave new world of technology and solutions is a way that keeps people safe as we move forward. I'm excited about having these conversations. I've launched some great conversations with a number of big tech leaders, and I know that all of us want to be part of building a better future. That's why we're here. We just have to think about all the different aspects of that better future, and that's something that Canada is going to lead in as well.
So we just ran out of time, but I wanted to see if you have any additional thoughts or comments. We covered a range of topics, and it's been great to hear your thoughts on all these topics. Do you think we left anything out?
I'm just really excited to welcome you all to Toronto, to Canada, tell you you're going to have a great few days. I challenge you to think big, to challenge each other, but also think about the kind of communities and the kind of world that you're going to be building with the technologies that you're leading. And as you do that, as you lead your way forward, as you create tremendous success for you and your companies, try and think about how you're making sure to bring along the rest of society with you, because if we don't succeed together, we're all going to fail separately.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister.